with this parity, the expanded college football playoff is the perfect match.
Yeah, freshman Tebow, Chris Leak. You had that Arkansas team. What was it? Casey Dick and the Run DMC.
Casey Dick didn't do anything. What the
right.
hell?
No, I agree.
Shit.
I'm just saying,
Dick didn't do shit.
The Big Bets on Campus podcast. All right,
here we go.
Welcome back to the new BCS as part of the Big Bets on Campus podcast. I'm Stuckey, and joining me this week, Collin Wilson, and filling in for Mr. Brett McMurphy is fellow BBOC co-host Mike Calabrese. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome to our new channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe and like button, really helps us out. And if you're new here, what we do each and every Monday, talk a little high-level college football, general topics, futures, look a little bit at the weekday action. Kind of serves as just a check-in early in the week before we really get into the nitty-gritty and try to find some winners as we prep for the Group of Five podcast, which will be out Wednesday, and then the full betting preview, which Colin and I will do on Thursday, record part of that 6 p.m. Eastern live right here on the BBOC YouTube channel. And obviously the entire podcast will be out wherever you listen to podcasts. So, gentlemen, as we always do with these episodes early on, Calabrese, we go with our one key takeaway from the weekend, or if you want to go broader, the season so far. What do you got?
Yeah, I would just say at this point, it's kind of becoming this clown car of teams that are either undefeated or have one loss that I'm not really buying on right now. It doesn't mean that there's not time for these teams to get it together or get healthy or put a marquee performance together against a big opponent. But when I look at the top 25 as it came out, I always have these expectations of who's moving up, who's moving down. And just the last couple of weeks, I just keep seeing these numbers next to teams that it doesn't get there for me. Like Penn State at 3, Tennessee at 7, BYU 9, Iowa State 11, Pitt 18, SMU 20, Wazoo 22. The reason why I bring up these teams are that 6 of those 7, with the exception of SMU, they're all considerably lower rated in Bill Connolly's SP Plus rankings by an average of 10 slots. And I think that aligns with the issues that a lot of these teams have. It's that, yes, their resume looks pretty strong right now. In some cases, they have formidable schedule moving forward, like Penn State having to take on Ohio State. But others in that grouping, it's basically a red carpet to either being undefeated and going to a title game or having one loss. So I'll just kind of kick it to you guys. Like, my feeling is when the field expanded to 12, I was hoping that we'd have 2 or 3 of those teams that in previous seasons were held out because it was either the 14 playoff or the old BCS. They got hot at the right time, and we all, as a collective college football world, thought to ourselves, man, if that Georgia team in 2007 with no Sean Moreno had got a shot at the title, maybe they had won it. I'm just waiting for some of those teams to emerge because it just seems like a lot of flawed teams, a lot of mediocre football being played either on offense or defense by some of these teams with solid resumes. I'm not trying to throw cold water on the expanded playoff. There's some really good things happening as well. The fact of the matter is Boise is playing their way not only into the auto bid, but probably a ranking above 12 if they win out. So there's lots of good stories to feel, positively about, but there's just a lot of teams that it's difficult for me to match what their ranking is as to what they put on film or what their advanced stats say about them.
Yeah, I mean, but I just think that's a new world of college football. We're not going to have dominant elite teams, which matches with the expanded playoff. You need an expanded playoff if you're not going to have dominant elite teams. Like choosing the new, I saw what the BCS would be if the season ended today. It would be Oregon versus Penn State. Does anyone really think that that's what we would need? Just play this whole season and then have Oregon play Penn State? No. Oregon and Penn State are amongst the best teams in the country, but they're not head and shoulders above everyone else. Old college football usually had 2 to 3 to 4 teams that were clearly head and shoulders above the rest. This year, it's not like that. I don't think there's really any that are head and shoulders in a different class. And I think that's because of NIL, wider distribution of talent, less depth. And I think that fits better with an expanded playoff. So I think it actually works in tandem. And we're just not going to have these dominant elite teams anyway. I mean, we might still have them, but they're just going to be fewer. They're going to be rare on an annual basis. Colin, do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think this is going to turn into college basketball real fast in the month of November. There's
without
always,
UConn.
Without UConn. There's always a team that is hot at the end of the college basketball season, gets a 5, 6, 7, 8 seed no one wants to play, and then that team potentially goes on a run, makes the Sweet 16, and can rumble and make some noise. And I think that's what we're going to get here in the month of November. Right now, nobody is standing out, particularly as a hot national title contender. Like, everybody has flaws. There are ways to attack any team that you guys can talk about. Even Georgia falls asleep at the wheel at a couple quarters. And I think there's two teams that I want to touch on. Ohio State's not winning the national championship. I mean, they were stuffed on 41% of their rushing attempts against the Nebraska defense. They averaged 2.6 yards per play. They just had one explosive out of however many rushing attempts. Also, one thing people don't realize about Ohio State, they're dead last in opponent penalties. How lucky can you be when your opponents are averaging 4 flags per game at 28 yards? I think there's regression coming for them. More importantly, Ohio State doesn't have it in the trench on either side of the ball. When your line yards are outside the top 50, you can't make a case that you have a ferocious trench. That just doesn't flip on and off like offenses. That just doesn't flip on and off.
Well, now they have injuries too.
And now they have injuries. I mean, think of LSU with Joe Burrow that year, right? I keep going back to that. They were missing 30 missed tackles per game. That can get fixed. A defensive coordinator can remedy that in like 1 or 2 weeks. But line yards and trench play, you can't remedy that. Your size is your size. Your speed is your speed. The other team that I think is going to show out, if you had to ask me one team that I can pin on in November that I think is going to probably sweep the schedule and be a national title contender, it's Texas A&M. Now, Collin Klein.
You're on my bandwagon now? You're on my bandwagon. I'm off it this weekend. I think South Carolina beats them, but
I do too. And I mean, that's the end of my little note here. But if Collin Klein didn't name a quarterback today, it's stuck. You and I we just talked about this yesterday. It's like, why would you name a quarterback, right? You've got one that can attack secondaries, and you got one that can attack weak front sevens. You and I both know, I've already talked about it. You're going to start Weigman against South Carolina's secondary. That's probably your best shot because South Carolina is really good at stopping RPO quarterbacks like Marcel Reed. So I will say this. I mean, the offense is second nationally in havoc allowed. That's great. They don't beat themselves. It's a Mike Elko team. And the offensive line, the Texas offense, and I want to point to the Texas game. If Texas A&M survives South Carolina this weekend, because I'm not sure they will, and the market definitely says South Carolina is going to give them a game, the Texas Longhorns offensive line right now is 75th in line yards, and they're 83rd in havoc allowed. Those are two areas that Texas A&M can completely expose. So mark my words, if Texas A&M survives South Carolina, national title contender. I give me a game of the year because the Longhorns are going down in the last week of the season.
Yeah, it's funny to hear some of the narratives when these teams don't play anyone. It was Texas's offensive line is generational, just like the Florida State defensive line. So it's funny to hear these hyperboles on certain units. The Texas offensive line certainly got pushed around against the one opponent that they did play. They weren't even that great against Vandy, to be honest.
Yep.
My biggest takeaway is something you just talked about with Texas A&M. Quarterback optionality, I think, is going to be the new trend in college football. Having the ability to transition to a running RPO quarterback or more of a passing quarterback based on the matchup, based on how the game is playing out, makes it much more difficult for your opponent to prepare for you, switch in game. I think we saw it. We've seen it multiple times this year. Texas A&M's the most obvious example. But even with Penn State, Aller goes down last week. Wisconsin wasn't preparing for, and now look, that game changed on an interception, but they weren't prepared for that offense, and it's difficult. So I think quarterback optionality is going to be in vogue moving forward. And yeah, going back to what I said originally, just parity. It's going to be much more parity, many more upsets. And people are like, oh, the games don't mean as much. More games are going to mean more in this format. Like, take LSU, Alabama. It's an elimination game in 2 weeks. There's been many elimination games already, and there will be many more throughout the rest of the season. And with this parity, the expanded college football playoff is the perfect match. You would not want to play this whole season and say, all right, we're just going to take Oregon Penn State and play the national title, going back to the BCS days. All right, let's talk some futures. I will say, if looking at tiebreakers, so if you look at, let's do, because there's a chance that there's a lot of tiebreakers here. For example, if Penn State beats Ohio State, if Ohio State beats Penn State and they're favored, and then they win out, those teams win out, then Ohio State would have beaten Penn State, but lost to Oregon. Penn State and Oregon don't play each other. And let's say Indiana also has one loss, which is just to Ohio State. Then there's a four-way tie. I believe it goes down to conference opponents' conference record, in which case Indiana would be F. They're out. I shouldn't say they'd be out, but more than likely. Right now, if you take all of their opponents, past and future, Penn State 19-22, Oregon 18-21, Ohio State 25-15, they'd be in the tiebreaker. Indiana 15-24. So, and it would be very close as of right now between Oregon and Penn State. If the season ended today and all those teams were tied, it would be Penn State versus Ohio State. Yeah, even though Oregon beat Ohio State, Oregon would be the odd man out. Very interesting to watch. But Indiana, in that case, you're out. Big 12. There's a chance if, say, Kansas State beats Iowa State at the end of the season and BYU loses one more game and Colorado wins out. Well, in that case, you're probably getting a rematch of Kansas State, Iowa State. Kansas State almost certainly would win the tiebreaker. Iowa State would be next. BYU and Colorado, Big 12 schedules are jokes. Colorado's, for example, Kansas State, their opponents in the Big 12 as of right now, past and future, are 5 games over 500. Colorado, 13 games under 500. BYU, 16 games under 500. Not making up that ground. So Colorado needs a lot of help. BYU, they just keep winning. They're going to get there. But if there's some chaos and there's multi-team tiebreakers, looks like Kansas State and Iowa State would have the edge as of right now. Things could change, but those are big head starts. Then if we look at the ACC, if we assume SMU beats Pitt in the Fraud Bowl this weekend, then Pitt drops out. If SMU, Miami, and Clemson all win out, as of right now, and it would, they don't play each other, come down to tiebreakers. As of right now, it would be Miami versus Clemson. SMU needs some help. Right now, their ACC opponents, if we can remove Florida State and Louisville, because all 3 teams play those 2 teams, there's a lot of overlap with the other opponents. As of right now, the conference record of Clemson's ACC opponents, 12-13, Miami, and these are excluding the common, Miami 9-11, SMU 9-16. If you are an SMU fan, you need to start rooting for BC. Yikes. That's the one team that SMU plays that neither Miami or Clemson don't. That's hurting their tiebreaker resume. If you're a Miami fan, you're rooting for Cuse, because neither SMU or Clemson play Syracuse. And if you're a Clemson fan, you're rooting for NC State, because Clemson plays NC State, SMU or Miami don't. Otherwise, there's a ton of overlap. So in order for SMU to make up ground, you need BC to start winning some games. Or Miami or Clemson drops a game and you just keep winning. But from a tiebreaker point of view, as of right now, SMU would be on the outside looking in. That's a lot. I hope that made some sense. Did that make sense to you guys when I'm going through that?
It did, yeah.
Yeah, but this is gonna. I think in 2 weeks,
Colin's gonna here comes the sword and shield because SMU's on the outside looking in.
Hey, listen, man. We told everybody SMU over 7.5. We got 1 game to go. Baby. No, this is gonna be tough to do over the next couple of weeks. I think when we have 3 games left, we'll have a clearer picture about the path, because my future is worth betting. I just wanted to mention, because you were just to cap off your Big 12 talk. If you go ahead and look at the remaining schedule and what the projected lines are going to be, everybody's on us on the voicemails about hating on BYU, but BYU is going to be favored by a field goal just once for the rest of the season. That's it. And Kansas State is going to be -12 or higher in every game except for Iowa State. And Colorado is going to be a favorite in every game except for a Kansas pick'em.
Kansas beats them.
I'm just saying, this BYU thing, it could probably happen, but I mean, they're going to have to win a huge 3 coin flips from here on out.
Yep. Colin, any futures you like worth betting right now?
I really want to. I mean, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago we said Colorado State has the easiest schedule in Mountain West. It was 42-1. I think we all sat in the podcast, kind of sat back and looked at that. Last week wrote up a futures piece. They were 18-1. Now they are 13-1. There's only one hedge spot in the entire schedule, and it's Fresno State. So keep your eyes out on Colorado State. And then after that, in the ACC, look, SMU's +175 to make the playoff. I listened to what Stuck said about the tiebreakers. It does not favor SMU. And frankly, for their playoff hopes, I don't want them playing Miami and Clemson at all. They'll get blown out of the water. So if you think that those tiebreakers are going to fill out in the ACC, the committee is still going to take a one-loss SMU team into the college football playoff. SMU +175. It was 150 last week. They survived that Duke game. And I listen, clip the soundbite. It's a joke. They shouldn't have beat Duke. But they're going to the playoff, +175.
They really do miss RJ Maryland now. Calabrese, what do you got?
So I wrote this up in the post. It's coming out on Tuesday. When you look at the futures market right now, a lot of the values dried up, particularly in the conference races, because everything you laid out mathematically, a lot of these teams that are further down the board that, potentially could have value, they just don't control their own destiny. So what I wanted to do is pair 2 teams that I think will end up winning their conference championship games to see if I could get a juicy payout north of 3-1. It's almost at 4-1. You take Boise and you take Georgia. Boise showed me everything I needed to know against UNLV. They'll get them in a rematch on the blue up in Boise in the title game. And when I look at it, it's more than just Genty now. I needed to see Maddox Madsen do something against pressure when he was asked to create plays. He was efficient. He didn't turn the ball over. He had that long run as well. And then defensively, the Broncos are trending to be the best blitzing team really since the NCAA started capturing these stats in 2000. Their sack rate for dropbacks is over 12%. That would be the highest that's ever been tracked in FBS football. And a big part of it is their defensive backs get home. As a secondary unit, they have 9.5 sacks alone there. It's not just the blitz, it's not just the scheme, it's the blitzers. These guys know what to do when they get their opportunities. So I really like what they're doing out in the Mountain West Conference. And if it is a rematch against UNLV, I think that there's an opportunity for them to win going away at home if they get 4 quarters of a healthy Genty. He really gutted out that game with his arm injury. And then the Georgia side of things, 50 points in the first half of their last 2 games. I'm not saying that Mike Bobo has figured out these slow starts, but at least it's trending in the right direction. And if they get on top of teams, you look at their standard passing downs, they just don't give up passing yardage. And their pass rush is back. They have bark, they have bite. I like what Georgia's doing. I think in a rematch against Texas in Atlanta, they would win. That's certainly not, already locked in by any stretch. But in terms of the value of taking those 2 favorites to win their conferences at +375, +400, I like it.
Good stuff there. I don't see much. I don't mind Penn State around 5-1 ahead of this weekend. There's some quarterback uncertainty there, but if they lose this game, there's still a chance that they get to the Big Ten championship. So if you like Penn State and you'd rather go with a little bit more upside, I don't hate that play because they could still get there even if they lose this game to Ohio State because of the tiebreakers. And I agree with Colin. I'm just not fully sold on this Ohio State team. BG now the rightful favorite in the MAC. They are the best team in that conference. There's been wild movement there. I don't see anyone else worth betting. I don't see much, to be honest. Not much. If you can find an SMU to not win the ACC, I like that. I'm just kidding. Trying to get a reaction out of Colin.
Sorry, I think we have to. I think that number for Penn State, Ohio State's going down. I don't know if we want to do our pod up from Thursday now, but I love Penn State in this game.
Yeah, there's definitely some quarterback injuries worth noting. Pitt, yeah. Eli Holstein. I'll go through all of them on Thursday. I think he's going to play, but he's dinged up. Drew Aller, he's true game time decision. No, you're not going to get anything out of Franklin. In a way, I think. Oh my God! Here we go. I got to do it again. Pribula. I don't know how to pronounce it. Can I get an official pronunciation guide?
Pribula.
Pribula. Unreal. Bo knows. In a way, I think like here's the quarterback optionality though. Could work in your favor. Like Ohio State's got to prep for both. In a way, I think with Bo, they match up better with Ohio State. Because I think you can run on Ohio State and take advantage of these linebackers and this inconsistent defensive line. I don't mind the under either, but maybe it's like start out with Aller and then here comes Bo, a little Texas A&M game plan. I don't know. I think they might match up better with Ohio State with Bo, who showed to be capable enough as a thrower, but we'll see.
You've been talking quarterback optionality, Stuck. Who would you say is your favorite all-time rotating quarterback situation that worked? It's like kind of rolling through my mind. The SEC's seen a bunch. You had, freshman Tebow, Chris Leak. You had that Arkansas team. What was it? Casey Dick and the run DMC.
Casey Dick didn't do anything. What the
right.
hell?
No, I agree. I'm just saying,
Dick didn't do shit. He took
there we
over
go.
For,
I knew I could wake you up with a little Arkansas.
My God, he took over for Mitch Mustaine and stood there as a statue and let Run DMC go. Casey Dick didn't do shit.
Correct.
All right.
I'm going to say the 2024 Jack Tuttle, Alex Orji, Davis Warren rotation.
Yeah, low hanging.
What an outplay. My favorite, I don't know. I got to think about that. I will come with an answer next week. Because there's probably some Mac ones that aren't popping in the top of my head. That's a good question.
We do have to have a Mac future next week on this show, considering Maction is beginning.
No, I don't. I'm rolling with BG.
Right. Yep.
From beginning to end. Are you going? Your Buffalo boys.
Yeah.
They're dead. I tried to warn you.
I know.
They lose by 50 last weekend.
The Bobs took care of business and then some.
Yeah, I was dead wrong on Ohio. They're much better. I mean, granted, they haven't really beat anybody, but they're much better than I projected. Do you have your eye on somewhere else? You're going to burn money going against BJ again?
I already have a 7 on BGSU, but going into Maction play, I think it's good that we try to find the best number for people that are just now catching on. I'm sure your Mac manifesto will help with that too.
Yep. There's plenty of other quarterback injury news. Yeah. Tootin, it looks like he's out for Biotech, right?
Teammate just said that he's going to play an hour ago.
Oh, wow.
And then the market hasn't moved as of we're recording this, but within 15 minutes ago, it looks like Diego Pavia is banged up, but is going to play against Auburn. I don't know if that's going to move it off 6.5, though.
Close to 7. I make it 9.
Does it matter against Jerry Kill? For the people that don't know, and Calabrese should know, the G5 guys should know this, like Jerry Kill at New Mexico State owned Liberty and Hugh Freeze. I lost Auburn over 6.5 wins last year because Jerry Kill beat Hugh Freeze. All right. I mean, Jerry Kill just beats Hugh Freeze. Death taxes and Jerry Kill over Hugh Freeze.
It's different when you're catching 24, though. I mean,
that's true.
To me, this number's short. Pavia's banged up.
And remember Pavia, what was it? The Conference USA title game, he was banged up. Like, he guts it out when he shouldn't. There's some quarterbacks where it's like it's a good sign if they're questionable and then they start. Could be a bad sign if he's questionable and he forces his way into the lineup. And you saw that at the end of the Texas game. He was bad. He couldn't really move around as much. He got that roughing the passer on the pick 6, luckily, but he went into the 10. He hurt his shoulder. He hurt his knee, had a knee brace, and he is not the same quarterback if he can't create with his legs. Like, just he's not. So there's been a lot of wear and tear. I mean, look, they played over the last month. They were at Kentucky. They played Texas, Alabama. They played some physical games, and they played a lot of close games too. So like even Ball State, he didn't really get the rest because they were like tied in the third quarter. So he never kind of takes a play off or shies away from contact. So
Yeah, there's been a lot of wear and tear. I'm sure they have Auburn's full attention, but yeah, we'll see if Kill can do it again against
Speaking of quarterbacks that I thought died and you could have had a funeral for them, Skylar Locklear of UTEP has been named the game time decision against Middle Tennessee.
No pickles?
I bet yesterday on UTEP on open for JP Pickles, but we'll see how Skylar Locklear. I mean, how is he alive? Calabrese, how is he alive after that hit? His soul left his body.
Yeah, it was the scene. What was that 90s basketball movie? I think the Wayans brothers were in it, University of Washington, when the guy's soul leaves his body. Yeah, that's exactly what happened in that hit. I agree. If there was a governing body on concussions and CTE, he would not be playing, but here we are.
The sixth man?
The sixth man. There we go. Thank you. Appreciate the pickup there.
We need our Pickle Cat package back in there for UTEP football because you know what? I said this about UTEP when I took that season long under, that for Scotty Waldron, they will play hard throughout the month of November. They will play their asses off for him. So keep that in mind with UTEP.
Yeah, lots more quarterback news. Now, I'll go through all of them on Thursday. You didn't bring any trivia, did you, Calabrese?
I did. I got a sources stumper for you.
Oh, okay. What do you got?
All right. So we got Ashton Genty. We got Travis Hunter right now in the mix. They're in the top 4 of the odds board. It's likely that if they stay healthy, play out all their games, they're at least going to get invited to New York. So here's the question. Since 2000, we've only witnessed 2 Heisman ceremonies where the majority, keyword in this question is majority, of the candidates were representing schools outside of the AP or college football playoff top 10 at the time. It's happened twice. Hopefully one of you can get one of the correct answers. So as a team, fill this out. One more time. Since 2000, we've only witnessed 2 Heisman ceremonies where the majority of the finalists were representing schools outside of the top 10 at the time. Name either instance.
So we can't go back to Houston, Andre, where we can't go way back, right?
Right. Yep. The only hint that I will give you, there was a couple that as I was looking at the voting totals, I thought to myself, oh, there's another year. But they basically scale up and scale down the amount of finalists they actually invite to New York arbitrarily. There are some years where there's 6 dudes. There's plenty of years where there's 3. So that would be my little hint for you guys.
Who goes first?
Colin, you can go. You're down.
It's just a shot in the dark. I believe Alabama lost 3 games in 2009. Mark Ingram won the Heisman. So let me go with Alabama, or let me go with 2009.
Incorrect.
Maybe you're being topical. Texas A&M kind of faded down the stretch in 2012 with Manziel when he won it. So would that have been, that's Manziel, Manti Te'o? They probably were in the top 10. And I don't know who was in that other room. I don't know. There was one, I think there was only one other person.
Colin Klein, I do believe.
So not 2012?
Not 2012. So I think what you're thinking of is the following year with Johnny, they faded late when they started the season early. They actually were surging by the end. They made the Cotton Bowl and then beat the brakes off.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Let me go because I know that they didn't get close to national championship status, and his number flew off the board after the Florida State spread was 3, and Lamar Jackson put up 50 by himself. So let's go 2016.
2017, Baker Mayfield won it. The finalists were Lamar Jackson. He at the time was unranked, and Bryce Love from Stanford. He was 13th in the country. So those 2 of the 3 finalists were outside. So 2017 is one of the correct answers.
Is it not 2013 with Manziel?
It is not 2013.
Yeah, Colin.
Well, I can't go back. He's already mentioned Darren McFadden, but Troy Smith won that, and I know that was, and I thought we were pretty high. You know what? I'll just go the Troy Smith, Darren McFadden year, 2006.
Ding, ding, ding. That is correct. Troy Smith wins it. Brady Quinn from Notre Dame, 11th in the AP poll. Arkansas, 12th at the time.
We were 12. Huh.
Yes. Good work there, guys.
2 points for Colin. We'll get it on the board for Brett and update the leaderboard next weekend. That was a good one. Thank you for coming prepared, Calabrese. One for the road. We do have 6 midweek games across Conference USA and the American this week. 3 on Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, 1 on Thursday. This is the last week of our long national nightmare where the Conference USA is running our country during the week. Next week will be the return of Maction. Gentlemen, anything you got for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Calabrese, I'll start with you.
Sam Houston, anything under 2 touchdowns, it's 9.5 right now against La Tech. We get Hunter Watson back. In games where Watson started and finished, the Bearcats are 5-1 against the closing number. That's all I care about. I said in the offseason that La Tech was going to go under their win total. They were going to fire Sonny Cumbie. They played great one time for 4 quarters of a consecutive game the entire season. That was their 48-21 home win against Middle Tennessee. But on the road, they lost to lifeless New Mexico State, FIU. This team is in the running to have the worst rushing attack in FBS, which is critical because the Bearcats' biggest issue is stopping the run. So I think it's going to be a wash there, more or less. La Tech also 95th in quality drives, so I don't see this offense being able to keep up with a Hunter Watson-led Bearcat attack. And then finally, when you look at what he's done in his last 4 full games, they averaged 35 points per game. And he went off on the ground twice with over 100 rushing on his own and 2 touchdowns in 2 of those 4 games. I'm a believer in him. I'm glad we're going to have him back. And I'm going to go Bearcats. So eat them up.
Yeah, I agree here. With Watson back, this should be a blowout. I also think Western Kentucky takes Collins, Kennesaw State Owls behind the shed and puts a bullet in their head.
I haven't bet it yet. Come on. But the numbers, listen.
Just tell me what I think happens. What do you like during the week?
All right. So during the week, Tuesday night, I like New Mexico State, Florida International on the under down to the key of 41. It's at 43.5 as we're doing this. I don't have to go in deep to let you guys know that the quality drives is bottom 10 in the nation. Getting into scoring position is a problem. Keon Jenkins is going to play. That also increases the chance of some havoc and some fumbles. So that could be there. Liberty should not have been an underdog to Jacksonville State. I understand what Jacksonville State has done to their opponents over the last few weeks, and I understand how bad Liberty looked. It was probably one of those cases where Liberty played their worst game in history. The number was way too far. I would stop at 3 on the Flames, Liberty -3, which we are trending well on our way. And I have not played Kennesaw State against Western Kentucky, and I don't think that I can, even though I make the number about 18.5. There is just way too much going on with the fact that I think Kennesaw State's offensive output was a little bit of a fraud. They're too careless with the ball, and Western Kentucky has things in their offensive game that Kennesaw State can't touch. So I'm not going to be playing our beloved Owls that have covered for us 2 weeks in a row. I'm going to stay off that.
Yeah, I think in the state of Kentucky, I don't know if you need a permit to shoot now. But I'm pretty sure Western Kentucky filed for one.
What the hell got into Kennesaw State last week, right? After 5 points against Middle. I mean, it's just some amazing. This Conference USA is looking for an identity. It doesn't need to be Kennesaw State's offense.
Yeah, ugly. All right, gentlemen. That'll do it for us. Before we get out of here, here's an excerpt from conversation I had earlier today with the newest BBOC contributor, college football legend, Johnny Manziel. All right, that'll do it for today's episode. Tomorrow, the group of 5 guys, Mike Calabrese, Mike Gianella, return. And then Colin and I will be back for the full betting preview, as I mentioned earlier. Record part of that live, 6 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, later that night. Wherever you're listening by Friday morning as well. But thanks for joining us. Hope Brett is doing well. He's traveling. Thanks for filling in, Calabrese. Nice job as always. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Thanks to our producer, David, on the back end. One more time, make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel and subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. Leave a 5-star review, really helps us out. Time for us to go find some winners. We'll catch y'all later in the week. Cheers.